Well-adjusted children play with nearly any kid around them who is also well-adjusted. Kids will invent games out of thin air to play, regardless of the environment or what's around them. Kids do this to explore new things with each other. They learn together, bounce ideas off each other, and grow in character. They explore the realities around them. Nowadays, it seems like there's a time when kids stop playing, and in a way, this can be a sign of maturity. When one better understands the world around them, manifesting a fantastical, made-up world to superimpose on reality is no longer as necessary. The perspective becomes more in line with reality and less fantastical. This is often a sign of development, but it's not the same as saying that play should stop. Play should evolve. Adults, as all of us are aware, don't know everything. When one grows older, not everything becomes a closed case. In fact, on the contrary, things seem to become more complicated. When the world opens up, one understands further levels of complexity. These must still be understood, still explored, still examined and manipulated with, still played with. And the best way to understand, manipulate, and play with ideas is with other people. Adults need to play just as much as kids do, perhaps even more. The mode of play simply needs to adapt and change with our maturity. As adults, we need to talk about ideas with our peers. We need to play up, like my dad would always say in basketball. We need to evolve. We need to try new things. We need to reinvigorate that childish play that explores the world. This play needs to be with those that play fair. Without fair play, we can't properly learn. Fair play allows for continued play over long spans of time. Fair play allows for mistakes. It forgives and allows people to explore new things. It's honest and is productive. Fair play has love and truth. When I went off to college, I joined some small groups where I would see those lights in people's eyes as I asked pointed questions. Like in high school, I got a reputation for this in college as well. I like seeing this look on people's faces and liked it even more when people embraced this part of themselves. My wife and I started our own small group so that we could pick the topics and dive in deep as possible on interesting topics. People came and went from that small group as college was busy, but there was a core group of people that we would discuss things with every week. This core group was wildly diverse in background and in the ways that they thought. Some people were hyper-conscientious. Some were super open. Others were engineers, nurses, or humanities students. Some were more conservative, some more liberal, everything under the sun. This amalgamation of different perspectives allowed me, and I think everyone else in the small group, to understand a perspective that differed from our own, and to learn things that we wouldn't have otherwise understood. The group loved to dive into intellectual and theological discussions. It was a real special group of people that would posit new ideas, ask questions, encourage thinking, and seek to leave with a better understanding than we started with. It was a place that I learned a lot of new things, and those small groups were some of the best times I had at college. Throughout all stages in my life, one good avenue I found for exploring new thoughts, ideas, and questions I had was actually at my church. Each week when I was young, I would stay after the service and ask the pastor questions about the message, Bible verses I had been reading, or just general theological topics. Almost always I was met with serious answers to my questions. When I aged out of some of the required small groups that we had to attend as kids, I joined an optional youth group at my church where I had a phenomenal youth group leader that would answer every single question I had. For a high schooler, this was awesome. I was taken seriously and treated like an adult, even though I was not one yet. I've heard from some people that when they ask genuine questions or try and bring things up at church that they are met with stonewalls, or that they were dismissed and scolded. This really saddens me. The church should be a place where questions can be asked, where answers can be found, and where people can be taken seriously, where people can be accepted for where they're at on their journey. Thankfully, my experience was very different than most people's, both at church and at home. My parents had requirements surrounding attending church, but they didn't put what I would describe as emotional, manipulative pressure on me to believe in something. It was as if they put food on our table and said that we needed to try one bite, but if we didn't want to eat any more, we didn't have to. Something that was both metaphorically and literally true in my household. As I grew older, my parents began to treat me like I was an adult. This obviously didn't happen overnight, and it didn't apply to everything. It wasn't as if I had no rules, but as I matured and grew up, the transition into being treated like an adult was gradual. I was given more responsibility gradually. I was treated as if I was older than I was. I was given leadership responsibilities and roles, and I took those seriously and appreciated them greatly. When my parents would have friends over, The ones that were new, or rarely came, would treat me like a child. But those that came over frequently, or paid attention, would generally begin to treat me as an autonomous individual. I wanted to be seen as an adult, not because I wanted some level of prestige, but because I wanted to be welcomed into more complicated conversations. I wanted to engage in more intellectual, adult discussions. I didn't see myself as equals to those 20 or 30 years older than me, but I did see myself as a young adult and wanted to be seen and treated as such. I learned a lot from these conversations. I gained mentors, figured out what I wanted to study for college, what I wanted to do with my life, and so much more. But perhaps those are stories for another time. Since I was young, my life has been characterized by asking questions, from childhood on. Young children ask why because they're curious. They want to learn new things. And this usually makes sense because, well, they're kids. They don't know much yet. But as you get older, you learn more, you understand more, and you solve more problems. Yet at the same time, it's also true that the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know. If you really think about it, we should be asking, why, far more often as adults than we ever did as kids. Of course, it doesn't necessarily manifest in a verbal why to those around us, but we should, increasingly, be pondering, questioning, contemplating, and considering the intellectual world around us. We were given brains, curiosity, and intelligence, unmatched by any other species on Earth. It should be a shame not to use it. Yet so often, people deny this part of themselves. They deny the part of them that longs for more. They deny the search for knowledge, that which makes us unique. And with that, they deny themselves.